So we're done now with another section. Congratulations. You're doing great. You just keep going. And this is kind of cool because it's like the more you hang out with stuff, I don't know if you realize this, right? Like let me just bring some awareness to it though for all of us. But the more time you spend with something, the more familiar you become with it, and the better you get at whatever it is you're spending time with. And so all we're doing here is we're spending time learning about HTML and CSS. And this is the path to perfection. This is the path to knowing how to build websites. This is the best path. And, just hanging out, watching these videos, spending time with me, talking about HTML and CSS, looking at the documentation, seeing how I go there, seeing how I interpret it and read it, you're gaining skills. You're learning about these different tags. You're learning about these different CSS properties. You're learning about how it all works together. And as I'm sure you've noticed, right, it's more familiar to you now. And so this is a really important part of the learning process and one of the best ways to learn. We're social creatures. We learn from each other. We learn by being with other humans and seeing how they do what they do. If you've ever had kids, you know that really well. Your kids will just pick up whatever you're doing, they'll do it. So you got to, that's the way we learn. So you are doing one of the best things you could do to learn all this by just watching these videos and continuing to go through this material and becoming more and more familiar with it. In this section, we've learned some great stuff about structuring documents. We've been focused upon semantic HTML, and we've become more familiar with a lot of these semantic HTML tags. We're really getting down into the nuances and the details about, which tag do we use where. And we've seen how using semantic HTML provides a lot of meaning to the structure of our document. So semantics, the word semantic is meaning, right? That's what semantic means. The meaning of semantic is meaning. And so that's really important. There's a lot of benefits. We saw that in this section. A lot of benefits to structuring your document well. It makes it more maintainable, more readable, more accessible. It improves your ranking in the search engines. We've learned some new terminology. We already knew semantic HTML, but we talked about that a little bit more. We learned the difference between structure and layout. We learned all about the document object model and what that stood for, often referred to as the DOM. We learned about document flow. So when people talk about the flow of a document or the document flow, you understand that, these are just all these different elements lining up one after another on the page. That's the normal flow of the document. We've learned about the HTML outline algorithm and that you should avoid it, and that you should outline your content, but you should do it with headings. And don't ever worry about the HTML5 outline algorithm unless things shift drastically. In which case I'll come back and change these videos. All right, so the main takeaway from this entire section is, you want to focus upon using semantic tags, and you want to avoid using divs. Only use a div when you need a generic container for styling purposes or something like that, right? But otherwise, use semantic HTML to define the different sections in your document where, you have content. One of the other cool things I think we learned in this section was, seeing how to read the documentation and that weird Venn diagram map where, there's different content categories, and understanding, how like certain tags can take certain elements that are like flow content or whatever they specify, and they could also, have certain parents, right? It's the other side of the same coin. So that was one of the cool things I liked about this section. Just as a little reminder, content categories, MDN, right? So here are the content categories in Mozilla Developer Network and that weird map. And then if we had like an image tag or an aside, that's one of the ones we've been working with, we could see, hey, an aside can take anything which is part of the flow content category. Well, we could go see everything that's part of the flow content category right here. So what was that I just had? An aside can take any of these because they're all members of the flow content category. Kind of cool. So we learned that in this video. All right, and then we learned some new HTML tags: header, nav, main, article, section, aside, footer, H1 through H6, figure, fig caption, and address. So good on you. You're doing great. Keep going. And yeah, just notice, like take a moment to recognize in yourself how much more familiar you are now with all of this stuff, right? We're a couple of hours into this training, maybe about halfway, and maybe a little bit more than that. I'll never know until it's done. But, you've put in some time, and now because of that, right, you understand so much more about websites and how they're created and HTML and CSS and the separation of concerns and semantic HTML and reading documentation. Like, whoa, you've got a lot of good stuff. So we're getting there. And you're learning your craft. You're becoming a craftsperson. You're learning the materials and the different nuances of the materials and the different tools. And, once you've gained more mastery over the materials and have greater understanding of all the different materials we could work with, we're going to be able to feed those into creating cool pages. So it's coming. It's coming along. All right, let's keep going. Hang in there. You're doing great. And I will see you after I've caught some Z's.